Hello and welcome as we raise a glass to the 40 greatest moments from an exceptional sitcom.
The Blackadder!
Yes, indeed. Blackadder spanned all the ages with high comedy and low farce.
Oh my God, my earmuffs have fallen down.
Quite so. But no wonder it's so good. Just look at the people involved, all colossi of British comedy.
Is this true?
Yes.
Our eponymous hero is played by Rowan Atkinson.
People should be reminded of just how great Rowan is in the show.
We did this robbery together, so you get half the cash.
Oh, thank you, Mr. B.
This robbery, on the other hand, I'm doing alone. Hand it over, your money or your life.
It featured stars like Stephen Fry.
The great thing about Blackadder, I suppose, was that it played with the British idea of being British.
Operation Winkle.
Winkle?
Yeah.
And was written by towering talents Richard Curtis and Ben Elton.
And of course, fantastic, the opportunity to write lines for Rowan Atkinson, you know, was an incredible offer, and to work with Richard.
Hugh Laurie, too, showed some early signs of international star quality.
I simply immersed myself in the material. I always go back. No, I read out the very splendid words that they'd written for me.
You mean the moment's finally arrived for us to give Harry Hahn a darn good British-style thrashing, 6 of the best, trousers down?
So here's a cunning plan of the very highest order.
Excellent.
Let's take some time to luxuriate over the 40 very best moments
We're having a good time already.
as we relive the wittiest sitcom in history.
Prepare to be amazed.
The stars of the show are here.
Darling.
Yes, sir.
Doing Darling was a kind of a way of hoping people might forget a little bit about Percy.
I have a cunning plan.
I'm dead chuffed to have been in it. And of course it transformed my career and my life.
Wicked child!
It's a mark of having arrived in a way to be in Blackadder, something I'm very proud of.
Along with a slew of celebrity devotees who share their love for the show.
Blackadder is just ridiculous.
A wibble.
That's what's funny about it.
There was an awful lot of people being thrown through doors and people getting punched, which literally made me wee with laughter.
Blackadder spans over 500 years. So we'll have memorable moments from some of the most colourful periods and people in British history.
Ta-da!
Watch as the fiendish Edmund Blackadder and his hapless sidekick Baldrick endure the slings and arrows of outrageous comedy. Marvel as they make it through the whimsically hazardous Middle Ages.
Ah, Edmund!
It's a very complicated and curious borrowing from English history. That's not really the important thing about it. The important thing is it's very funny.
Gasp as they grapple with a deliciously capricious Elizabeth I.
I'm gonna knock your block off.
She's royalty. She can have anyone she likes.
Sometimes I think about having you executed just to see the expression on your face.
And finally, shudder as they encounter insanity on the grandest scale in the trenches of the First World War.
One of the best television moments you'll ever see.
All the moments you'll see tonight were selected by the Blackadder family, members of the cast,
I'll give it 7.
11 out of 10.
members of the crew,
9.
celebrity fans,
10.
and real Blackadders themselves.
Hi, I'm Simon Blackadder.
Hi, I'm Jackie Blackadder.
And hi, I'm Will Blackadder.
I'm Kevin Blackadder.
Hi, I'm AJ Blackadder from Perth, Western Australia.
The long winter evenings must just fly.
Yes, we really did round up 15 genuine Blackadders from across the land, lock them in a screening room, and make them tell us their personal favourite moments. What torture.
My favourite moment, definitely from Series 2, Flashheart, and Like It Nursey, firm and fruity.
Nursey! I like it firm and fruity.
All were asked to choose their favourites, and the moments are ranked according to those with the most nominations.
I'm giving it 10. I'd like to give it 10.5.
Our first moment comes appropriately enough from the very first series. It's Medieval Genius at number 40.
Once more unto the bridge, dear friends, once more.
It was fantastic having Peter Cook in the first series of Blackadder.
I persuaded Peter to come and be Richard III, and I think probably in that first series we didn't really know what we were doing, and I think he probably thought we were all barking mad.
On Ralph, the Liar's Day!
At the time, his career was in a bit of the doldrums, but we all absolutely idolised him.
Your Majesty! You've lost your steed! Take mine!
No, no, no. I've won the battle. I've saved the kingdom. I think I can find myself a horse.
True, my noble lord. I'll see you back at the castle.
So be it. A horse.
And of course, Richard III does, of course, in Shakespeare, shout, a horse, my kingdom for a horse.
My kingdom for a horse. Ah, horsey.
Blackadder's hiding behind a bush at the Battle of Bosworth Field, keeping out of the way, as usual.
He's having a pee, Edmund, and then he turns round, this guy's pinching his horse.
Oi, that's my horse!
That'll teach you. You won't be doing that again, now will you?
And he realises he's cut the king's head off, who is my brother, and tries to put his head back on and gives him resuscitation, moving his arms up and down. I mean, it is absolutely inspired genius.
The key to Blackadder is his vaulting ambition, utter ruthlessness, and yet complete incompetence. And the scene in which he chops off Richard's head is so perfect a demonstration of that you don't need to know anything else about Blackadder. That is him. That is the sort of stupid, venal and utterly counterproductive thing that only someone like that would do.
Welcome back to Blackadder's Most Cunning Moments, a compendium of comedy moments from history's favourite sitcom. Our next moment is Equal 39th, the first of several ties. But where would Blackadder be without his trusty sidekick Baldrick? A lot better off, probably, but there'd be a lot fewer laughs.
I think there's something particularly British about him. You know, British love an underdog.
I was wondering if I might have the afternoon off.
You can have the afternoon off when you die, not before.
My own personal market research leads me to believe that Baldrick is the hero.
I have a cunning plan.
It wasn't until the second series, when Ben Elton joined the writing team, that he had this idea, why don't we turn Baldrick into the stupidest, most brain-dead creature that has existed in the whole course of human history.
There's a scene where he comes in with a mousetrap on his head, and it's pure Tom and Jerry. It could be Tom with Jerry, trying to catch Jerry with a piece of cheese hanging on in front of his mouth and some contraption on his head.
Why have you got a piece of cheese tied to the end of your nose?
To catch mice, my lord. I lie on the floor with my mouth open and hope they scurry in.
And do they?
Not yet, my lord.
I'm not surprised. Your breath comes straight from Satan's bottom, boy.
I think he's funniest, but I also think, you know, that he was, you know, a hero in many respects because he represented the working classes, I mean, literally.
Sharing the dubious honour of being equal to Baldrick is everyone's favourite pie maker, the lovelorn Mrs. Miggins.
No more sad little London for you, Balders. From now on, you will stand out in life as an individual.
Will I?
Well, of course you will. All the other slaves will be black.
Blackadder! Oh, what's all this I hear about you buying a bathing costume and 40 gallons of coconut oil. Are you going abroad then, sir?
Yes, I'm off.
Oh, sir, what a tragic end to all my dreams. And I'd always hoped that you'd settle down and marry me and that together we might await the slither of tiny adders.
Actually, it took me by surprise that Mrs. Miggins, carried a candle for Blackadder.
Mrs. M, if we were the last 3 humans on Earth, I'd be trying to start a family with Baldrick.
But I just love the despair and the tortured agony.
I still receive tons of fan mail for Mrs. Miggins, and it just constantly amazes me, the fan base that's out there, so much so that I think I'm going to have to start thinking about opening a cake or pie shop in the not-so-distant future.
Jokes on Blackadder in this Series 2 moment featuring his crafty arch-rival for the royal affection. It's none other than Queenie's fawning favourite, Lord Melchett, played with consummate sliminess by Stephen Fry.
Majesty. Surely not.
You utter creep.
Melchett is tolerated. He's not very exciting. He's sort of like a Grand Vizier without the wisdom, really. He's a sort of uncle.
Bye!
A part of the Queen liked having people saying nice things to her, but the other part of her, of course, realised that Melchett was just silly old Melchett and was not sexy like Blackadder, didn't make her scream when he walked into a room.
Executed.
She never delivered a single line the way we expected her to deliver them, never once, and they were always better. You know, this insane character that she produced obviously flattered the script enormously. I mean, the script was quite funny, but without her insane Queenie, it's obviously it couldn't possibly have been anything like as good.
It's for taking the mickey out of my beloved Edmund so cruelly. I'm gonna knock your block off.
Queenie's absolutely immature, and she's always had her way. And she's greedy and rapacious and threatening and everything.
Dame Flora Robson, Betty Davis, Glenda Jackson, Helen Mirren, Kate Blanchett, Judi Dench have all played Queen Elizabeth I. None of them played her as well as Miranda Richardson.
Oh, please! I so want to live!
There is that, that element of, comeuppance where you delight in the person being brought down to earth.
Oh, praise the Lord for the gift of laughter.
And the look on his face when he realises that he's been had is somewhere between I want to kiss you and I want to kill you, and it's just a beautiful moment.
The Prince Regent thinks that the Duke of Wellington's after him, and he has this plan where he's going to swap places with Blackadder. He's going to become the butler, and Blackadder will become the Prince Regent.
There's no alternative, sir. We must swap clothes.
Oh, fantastic. Yes, dressing up. I love it. It's like that story, The Prince and the Paupers.
And the Pauper.
Oh, yes. The Prince and the Paupers and the Pauper.
He was just gorgeously stupid.
Why, my own father wouldn't recognise me.
Your own father never can. He's mad.
Oh, yes.
I loved Your Highness, because it shows, in a very neat way, class distinction.
Unfortunately, sir, you do realise that I shall have to treat you like a servant.
Oh, I think I can cope with that, thank you, Blackadder.
And you'll have to get used to calling me Your Highness. Your Highness.
Your Highness, Your Highness.
No, just Your Highness, Your Highness.
That's what I said. Your Highness, Your Highness, Your Highness, Your Highness.
Yes, let's just leave that for now, shall we? Complicated stuff, obviously.
When Hugh plays stupid, there is nothing behind the eyes. So, I think we took Percy, who hadn't been clever, and scooped out the final teaspoonful of brains and presented
Hugh Laurie. He can do this extraordinary thing in which his eyes just take on a slight film of stupidity, and you know that no phrase you can utter, no truth you can express, no matter how simply done, can penetrate that film. It's just closed.
But what? Who? Where? How?
Don't even try to work it out, Baldrick. Two people you know well have exchanged coats, and now you don't know which is which.
I'll say, I'm pretty confused myself.
It still makes me giggle now thinking about it, because it was just clever.
See the little goblin, see his little feet, and his little nosy woes, isn't the goblin sweet?
Yes! Edmund starts singing the song about a little goblin. They get distracted. On any other day, Edmund would have been scheming. He'd have been doing something. Because he's, had a drink, all he wants to do is sing about the goblin.
See the little
Wait a minute. I'm sure there was something very important I had to do to all of you this morning.
Remember something about 10,000 florins, was it?
I think it was something about an inheritance. Look, do you not want to hear about this goblin or not? Yes! Right, well, perhaps this time I might be allowed to continue and perhaps finish with any luck.
Blackadder, drunk, singing an appalling little song. And who should appear from under Miranda's skirts than Miriam Margolyes with a hat sort of like that.
Luck! Well, hey! Get it? No. Oh, come on! Luck!
And there is a play on words at the end which you may not be able to show before the watershed.
And Miriam Margolyes is back as the Queen herself in the Blackadder Christmas Carol. Queen Victoria, that is.
What are you doing, Albert?
Nothing.
Oh, yes, you are, you naughty German sausage.
That's always an absolute treat to work with her on and off camera. I mean, she's a complete delight.
Tell me what you're doing.
I just said I'm not doing anything. Really, woman, when you're busy ruling India, you don't tell me what you are doing.
Jim Broadbent's doing a very, very good German accent.
So why should I tell you what I am doing when I am busy wrapping up this cushion for your surprise Christmas present? Damn!
But he is a brilliant comic artist, and that has gone on. He's one of our ornaments to our profession.
I love surprises. Christmas without surprises is like the nuts without a nutcracker. Which is why I have bought you this surprise nutcracker. Damn! Damn!
He's sort of stupid, but he's doing it because he adores her and he's so excited about the idea of surprising her, and it's just adorable.
Das ist nicht ausgezeichnet! For it is for precisely such an outing as this that I have bought you my final surprise present, this muff which I'm going to give you tomorrow. I had no memory of filming it or having seen it, and it came as a complete surprise. And it did strike me, and I don't laugh very readily at my own performances, but it did actually make me laugh.
You know what would cheer you up? Well, that's a Charlie Chaplin film. Oh, I love old chappers. Don't you, Cap?
Unfortunately, no, I don't.
Not really allowed to say that Charlie Chaplin's not funny, are you? Because he's a great comedy classic.
I find his film's about as funny as getting an arrow through the neck and then discovering there's a gas bill tied to it.
Funny as an arrow through the neck. Yeah, well, that's clearly not very funny. With a gas bill attached? No, that's good.
Well, all right, well, let's consult the men for a casting vote, shall we, Baldrick?
Sir!
Charlie Chaplin, Baldrick, what do you make of him?
Oh, sir, he's as funny as a vegetable that's grown into a rude and amusing shape, sir.
So you agree with me? Not at all funny.
Oh, come on, Skipper, play fair. In that last film of his, when he kicked that fellow in the backside, I thought I'd die.
Well, if that's your idea of comedy, we can provide our own without expending a halfpenny for the privilege. There, do you find that funny?
One of the things I love about Series 4 is that, strangely, I think Baldrick gained meaning. You know, he'd just been a fool and a butt the whole way through. But there was a remarkable thing I think happened right at the end of that series when he did suddenly seem to represent the working man, a kind of innocent who, due to the stupidity of everybody above him, is going to die. I think that was rather unexpected, in the same way that, in a funny way, George also represented, you know, the tragedy of posh people thrown to war like Rudyard Kipling's son.
Chaplin is a genius.
He certainly is a genius, George. He invented a way of getting paid $1 million a year for wearing a pair of stupid trousers. Did you find that funny, Baldrick?
What funny, sir?
Welcome, lads. Oh, this is the stuff, eh? Christmas sherry and charades with honest, manly fellows. I mean, for heaven's sake, what can I do with a girl that I can't do with you, eh?
I cannot conceive, sir.
Yes, well, that, now, who's first up for the game? I'd ask old Horatio here, but he's out of it, I'm afraid. So it's, it's the little monkey fellow first, is it?
It is indeed.
Excellent. Oh, I love charades.
He's the clown. He is just there and he's trying to play, saying, oh, wouldn't this be fun? Yes, this is great fun, good manly fellows all playing together. And he just cannot get this right.
It's a book.
Well done, Mr. B. I didn't think you'd get it that quickly.
That was damn clever.
You know, it was an absolutely perfect triangle, really, that Blackadder has a cretin as a master and a cretin as a servant, and that he's stuck in between this in a cretinous triangle.
Yes, another great Christmas tradition, explaining the rules 8 times to the Thicky twins. The round hasn't, in fact, started yet.
Baldrick and George are pretty much the same character by different mothers. I think one of them had a royal mother, the other one, I don't know, some kind of pig beast.
It's got to be a specific book. For instance, if it was the Bible, then I'd go like that to indicate that there are 2 syllables in it. And
2 what?
2 syllables.
2 silly bulls? I don't think so, Blackadder, not in the Bible. I can remember a fatted calf, but as I recall, that was quite a sensible animal. Oh, hi, Is it, Noah's Ark, with the 2 pigs, 2 ants, and 2 silly bulls? Is
2 syllables.
What?
Look, we're getting confused. Let's start again, shall we?
No, let's not. Blackadder, I think the whole game's getting a bit silly, to be honest. How about a nice Christmas story instead?
No, what a good idea, sir.
Blackadder himself, a deeply frustrated man, as a lower middle class, very brilliant, but in a world of Britain, never really going to get very far, cleverer, or in his opinion, cleverer than the people who by birth have done better than him. You know, some real honesty, I think, in the performances, which is, as I say, the key to great comedy.
Welcome back to Blackadder's Most Cunning Moments, chosen by the cast, crew, famous fans, and 15 actual Blackadders. Yes, they really do exist.
My favourite line from Blackadder is when Blackadder comes down the stairs and Baldrick says, "Good morning, Mr. B," and Blackadder says, "Baldrick, if I'd wanted to talk to a vegetable, I would have bought one at the market."
I thought it was very funny when Baldrick decides to make coffee out of mud and his dandruff.
I shall require my most splendid garments for the ceremony.
Certainly, my lord.
Hat, my lord. Trojan, I think.
Boots, my lord.
The Italian.
And codpiece, my lord.
Well, let's go for the Black Russian.
I think one of the things that made Blackadder so superb was the amount of research that went in both to the props and to the costumes. There were an awful lot of extraordinary codpieces around.
It was just wonderful to see this curly penis, brilliantly made by costume department, waggling on the front of Rowan.
The contradiction of a weed with a whopper.
You're dressed like this, Edmund.
Like what, sorry?
Oh, this enormous nonsense here.
You've got this fantastic sound effect that, you know, should have been in a Benny Hill sketch of it going...
Oh, this enormous nonsense here.
I love, love, love Percy.
Percy?
My lord!
Can you think of another best man?
What happens in the second series is suddenly the dialogue gets all very crisp and punchy, and you've got tremendous silliness, but actually it's all held together by very dignified, very strong performances. You know, Rowan is this incredibly cool guy, and Percy is this ludicrous twit.
Edmund, come quickly, the Queen wants to see you.
What are you wearing round your neck?
Percy, who had a very, very fine wardrobe all the way through, and it's when he comes in with a new ruff that he says is the talk of the court.
It's my new ruff.
You look like a bird who swallowed a plate, Percy.
There were real absurd fashions at the time where things were taken to huge extremes. So it's not so outlandish an idea.
It's the latest fashion, actually, and as a matter of fact, it makes me look rather sexy.
To another plate-swallowing bird, perhaps? If it was blind and hadn't had it in months.
Tim McInerney's the only actor in Britain who can pull off, that sounds quite rude, a ruff. He can pull off a ruff that big. That sounds terrible. But, you know, with his physicality and, you know, he does look like a bird.
I think you may be wrong.
You're a sad, laughable figure, aren't you, Percy?
I remember Richard Curtis once saying that Tim has the mind and the voice of Laurence Olivier, but he has the face and the neck of an ostrich.
Sails, the oars are in the rowlocks, and we must away.
Lady, it is my captain. Long on beard, short on legs.
Captain Redbeard Rum, who's Tom Baker, who's absolutely magnificent, who gets wheeled in. Long on beard, short on legs.
Oh, Captain, I wish you luck from the bottom of my heart.
You have a woman's bottom, my lady.
He's my favourite Doctor Who, so I'm working with, you know, it was a fabulous week. It's one of my favourite weeks on Blackadder.
I'll wager that sweet round pair of peaches has never been forced twixt two splintered planks to plug a leak and save a ship.
Certainly hasn't, and I'm quite pleased about it.
Baker's appearance is an absolute joy to behold. That voice booming through.
Anyway, what's wrong with women's bottoms?
Not big enough, Mom.
Mine might be.
And anyone who pays attention to her in a slightly flirtatious or sexy way, she crumbles with delight. I think she thinks he's quite extraordinary, even if he's legless.
I know I'm only a bluff old cove with no legs and a beard you could lose a badger in. But if you'll take me, I'm willing to be captain of your ship forever.
When she got overexcited about things, you know, she throws her hands to her face in a really obscure but childlike way, which is perfect for that moment.
What do you say?
No! Yes, please.
I'll be back. We'll all be back.
Mildred the cat, of course, is funny because much of the secret of Blackadder is built upon the idea of hierarchy.
It is just funny, that noise. It's just funny.
Sir, poor little Mildred the cat, what's he ever done to you?
It is the way of the world, Baldrick. The abused always kick downwards. I'm annoyed, and so I kick the cat. The cat pounces on the mouse, and finally the mouse bites you on the behind.
I think Baldrick puts up with all the physical and mental torture that he receives from Blackadder because he thinks that's the way of the world. He suffers pain and he accepts it because that's what people do to people like Baldrick. He doesn't notice it most of the time. It takes a very long time for pain to get from any part of his body up to his brain. And by the time it gets there, it's tired and doesn't really register very much. What do I do?
Nothing. You are last in God's great chain. Unless, of course, there's an earwig around here that you'd like to victimise.
Finally, we discover there's somebody even lower than Baldrick.
And now, steel yourselves, ladies, it's Lord Flashheart. He blasted onto screen in Series 2, but makes this surprise return in an appropriate trench coat in Series 4.
Eat knuckle, Fritz! Ugh. How disgusting! A Bosch on the sole of my boot!
The sheer opposite nature of his character from Rowan's, both in the narrative terms and as performers, made it a fabulous contrast. Two of the most talented comic performers of their day facing off against each other.
I just have to find a patch of grass to wipe it on. Probably get shunned in the officer's mess. Sorry about the pong, you fellows. Trod in a Bosch and can't get rid of the whiff.
It was very boysy sort of stuff, but I think a lot of women, like myself, loved it too.
Do you think we could dispense with the hilarious doggy-doo metaphor for a moment? I'm not a Bosch. This is a British trench.
Is it? Oh, that's a piece of luck. Thought I'd landed sausage side.
The imperturbable, debonair suavité of Rowan's character, oh, God, would be his response to this enormous "shut up, bam" from Rick.
If word gets out that I'm missing, 500 girls will kill themselves. I wouldn't want them on my conscience. Not that they ought to be on my face.
He's everything that Blackadder wants to be. He's a hero, he's brave, he's stylish, and that, of course, is why Blackadder hates him so much.
Yeah, I dumped the kite on the proles, so send a car. General Melchett's driver should do. She hangs around with a big knob, so she'll be used to a fella like me. Woof, woof!
I was working with Rick very closely at the time on The Young Ones and Filthy Rich and Cat Flap, and, you know, it was written very specifically with him in mind, and I thought it was quite brilliant.
Look, do you think you can make your obscene phone calls somewhere else?
And in another fine performance, here's Hugh Laurie acting the perfect fool as the Prince Regent. A dim bulb indeed.
I'm a gay bachelor, Blackadder. I'm a roarer, a rogerer, a gorger, and a puker.
Hugh's Prince Regent, I think, perhaps, you know, should be celebrated more. I mean, a truly brilliant performance of a foppish Regency idiot.
Right, so what's the plan?
Well, I thought I could take her a short note, expressing your honourable intentions.
Yes, I think so too. All right, then, we'll take this down. From His Royal Highness, the Prince of Wales, to Miss Amy Hardwood.
Prince Regent, played by Hugh Laurie so fantastically well, was totally inept at wooing and trying to write a love letter.
Tally-ho, my fine, saucy young trollop. Now, let's see. Trip along here with all your cash and some naughty night attire, and you'll be staring at my bedroom ceiling from now till Christmas, you lucky tart.
Ben and Richard had written some fantastic jokes and some great opportunities to shout and pull faces, which is sort of what I do, or what I did at the time. I've moved on since then. Oh, yes, I've grown.
Yours with the deepest respect, etc., signed George. P.S. Woof, woof.
That utter thickness was something that was fun to put Blackadder against, and different from Miranda's, you know, sort of dangerous childishness. And Hugh is so good as a performer in that. There are bits, and I once said to him in rehearsal, Hugh, you're a genius. Why? I don't understand why you're not a famous Hollywood star. And he is now.
Well, what do you think?
It's very moving, sir. Would you mind if I change just one tiny aspect of it?
Which one?
The words?
Hugh Laurie's utterly brilliant, but utterly historically inaccurate portrayal of the Prince Regent is fantastic. But I mean, it's ridiculous. The Prince Regent was 49 when he became Prince Regent and had a 50-inch waist. Hugh Laurie is very young and very thin. Strangely, the only thing they do have in common, the things that they really picked up on, is the Prince Regent was almost definitely pretty thick. He was also unbelievably profligate.
Oh, yes, I'll leave the details to you, Blackadder. Just make sure she knows I'm all man, with a bit of animal thrown in.
Certainly, sir.
Think of that haggard figure in House, and you think, is it really the same guy? But of course, he's just a terrific actor with a natural flair for comedy.
And now here's Hugh again, playing another prince who might also be a little overbred. The evil Ludwig from Series 2.
Forgive me, Herr Blackadder. I have been neglecting my duties as a host.
When he reveals himself and you see that it's Hugh Laurie, you get quite excited.
Please accept my apologies.
Rowan is inside a torture machine where the spikes point outwards, which must be the softest torture machine in the world.
I accept nothing from a man who imprisons his guests in a commode.
This mad German As ever with Hugh, he manages to find a voice which is, you know, very unexpected.
I hope this scum has not inconvenienced you.
It takes more than a maniac trying to cut off my ghoulies to inconvenience me.
It's very much like a parody, a very funny parody of the sort of Bond villain, you know, has trapped Bond and he's going to say, yes, I expect you to die. And then there's this sort of ludicrous kind of arch bit of dialogue between.
Good. If he had inconvenienced you, I was going to offer you his tongue.
Believe me, sir, if he had inconvenienced me, you would not have a tongue with which to make such an offer.
Let me assure you, Herr Blackadder, if I no longer had a tongue with which to make such an offer, you would no longer have a tongue with which to tell me that if I had inconvenienced you, I would no longer have a tongue with which to offer you his tongue.
Yes, well, enough of this banter.
The puritanical aunt is there having dinner, and Blackadder's terribly nervous about upsetting her, but he's been getting totally out of it and playing silly games.
Blackadder arrives with the what are they, stag party or slapstick boobs?
Sorry, he's sick. Leprosy. Of the brain.
What he is trying to tell you is that you appear to be wearing a pair of devil's dumplings.
It's the only time I've ever seen someone do a double take downwards, where he notices this pair of breasts and then, oh, yes, they really are breasts.
Oh, my God, my earmuffs have fallen down. It's getting... Would you like a pair? It's getting rather cold.
No, thank you.
There's no doubt in my mind that Rowan is a comic genius.
Cold is God's way of telling us to burn more Catholics.
Well, quite. Which reminds me, Auntie...
Don't call me Auntie! An aunt is a relative, and relatives are evidence of sex. And sex is hardly a fitting subject for the dinner table.
Or indeed, any table.
Except perhaps a table in a brothel.
There is something so absurd about somebody walking around with a pair of false boobs on their head that if you can't see the joke, there's something wrong with you.
Welcome back to our catwalk of cunning moments, with an early celebration of French fashion and Parisian chic. This was way back before Dior and Chanel had made their mark. Obviously.
If we are to stand any chance of survival in France, we shall have to dress as the smelliest lowlife imaginable.
Oh, yes? What sort of thing?
Well, sir, let me show you our Paris collection. Baldrick is wearing a sheep's bladder jacket with matching dung ball accessories. Hair by Crazy Meg of Bedlam Hair.
To have Baldrick swaying in, sashaying his way into the room as a model in a sort of fashion show was just a lovely idea.
Notice how the overpowering aroma of rotting pilchards has been woven cunningly into the ensemble. Baldrick, when did you last change your trousers?
I have never changed my trousers.
Thank you.
What does that say about the citizens of this country, that they would take Baldrick to their heart? He's not only stupid, he's incontinent.
You see, the ancient Greeks, sir, wrote in legend of a terrible container in which all the evils of the world were trapped. How prophetic they were. All they got wrong was the name. They called it Pandora's Box, when, of course, they meant Baldrick's trousers.
We certainly can get a bit whiffy, there's no doubt about
it. Come on, George, with 50,000 men getting killed a week, who's going to miss a pigeon?
You shot my speckled Jim!
Melchett in Series 4 was a very different character to the one in 2. He was much, much more aggressive, much more insane, much more powerful.
I call my first witness, General Sir Anthony Cecil Hogmanay Melchett.
Clever, clever.
The episode where Melchett presides over a court of laws, a brilliant parody of Britishness, because we like to believe that we were sort of played by the rules of the game and it was all very gentlemanly and everyone had a right to a decent trial. But actually it's just clearly as arbitrary as any kind of mad despotism is. And so there's a court with lawyers and things, but it's just a rigged trial. It's a joke.
General, did you own a lovely, plump, speckly pigeon called Speckled Jim, which you hand-reared from a chick, and which was your only childhood friend?
Yes. Yes, I did.
And did Captain Blackadder shoot the aforementioned pigeon?
Yes, he did.
Can you see Captain Blackadder anywhere in this courtroom?
That's him! That's him! That's the man! Ah!
No more questions, sir.
Splendid, excellent, first class.
Howl, howl, howl. Oh, well, can't be helped. I enjoyed those sort of turning on a sixpence emotionally things that Melchett did.
I therefore have absolutely no hesitation in announcing that the sentence of this court is that you, Captain Edmund Blackadder, be taken from this place and suffer death by shooting tomorrow at dawn. Do you have anything to say?
Yes. Could I have an alarm call, please?
As far as I recall, it was Stephen who came up with the name Darling, which I think is one of the truly great Blackadder jokes.
What do you want, darling?
Doing Darling was a kind of a way of hoping people might forget a little bit about Percy.
Yes, no, that was a fruitful contribution. One of the very few from Stephen Fry. It was generally a waste of space.
We actually had a vote just before the technical crew came in and said, look, is this Darling joke going to run very dry and is it going to seem really embarrassing after the third episode, or will it sustain? And Tim said, no, please let me keep it.
Don't you worry, darling. I intend to start interviewing suspects immediately.
This is completely ridiculous, Blackadder.
Darling is being completely unfairly interrogated and tortured by Blackadder, and as often with Blackadder, it's extremely silly. He's tied up in this ridiculous sort of comedy rope with a potty on his head.
You can't suspect me. I've only just arrived.
The first rule of counter-espionage, darling, is to suspect everyone. Believe me, I shall be asking myself some pretty searching questions later on. Now, tell me, what is the colour of the Queen of England's favourite hat?
How the hell should I know?
I see.
You can see that the relationship between them was very, very strained, had always been strained. And I think part of the thing that we worked on in that was that Blackadder didn't like Darling. Darling was this horrible little spotty oik who had managed to avoid being in the trenches.
What is the name of the German head of state?
Well, Kaiser Wilhelm, obviously.
So you're on first-name terms with a Kaiser, are you?
What did you expect me to say?
Darling, shh. Cigarette?
He plays good cop for a second, old Blackadder. He gives Darling a cigarette, pops it in his mouth, lights it. Darling has a few puffs. There's an amazing bit of comic timing, and then Blackadder bats it out of his mouth, plays bad cop again.
All right, you stinking piece of crap. Take old sonny, I know you. Tell me, fun darling, what was it finally won you over, eh? Was it the pumpernickel, or was it the thought of hanging around with big men in leather shorts?
I'll have you court-martialed for this, Blackadder.
What, for obeying the general's orders? That may be what you do in Munich, or should I say München, but not here, Werner. You're a filthy Hun spy, aren't you? Baldrick the Cocker Spaniel, please?
No, wait!
It's just a marvellous moment for us to see Blackadder doing. We want him to have revenge on this pencil-pushing, cowardly idiot, and he does it.
I was born in Croydon. I was educated at Ipplethorpe Primary School. I've got a girlfriend called Doris. I know the words to all 3 verses of God Save the King.
4 verses.
4 verses, 4 verses, I meant 4 verses.
Tim, being the wonderful actor he is, he knew how to play someone who all his life had been called darling in a sarcastic way, and he had that look in his eye.
Good luck, Blackadder.
Well, thank you, darling.
The twitch stayed with me for months, actually. It was really difficult. I mean, I did actually get quite scared that it was never going to go and that I'd have to start writing my own spin-offs because I wouldn't be able to get rid of the twitch and I'd never get another job.
Blackadder is expecting the Whiteadders, who are some puritanical relations, and there's some sort of inheritance or legacy involved, so he has to impress them.
Greetings, how nice it is to see you.
They arrive with these crosses on their heads.
Wicked child, don't lie! Everyone hates us, and you know it.
For a Jew, as I am, to be covered in crosses was a complex experience.
There's probably a few popes watching that going, it's actually not a bad idea.
May I introduce my friend, Lord Percy?
Well, Eddie. You didn't tell me you had such a good-looking aunt.
Miriam is wonderful in that role. And then when she starts slapping people, which is completely absurd, as if you'd be so religious that you can go around slapping people.
I know what I like, and I like what I see.
Begone, Satan!
There's just something hilarious about the way she gives his cheeks a pounding every time Tim McInerney opens his mouth. He gets a good slap.
I think she would probably say that there's no way of really faking it.
Begone, Satan!
But it really hurt, actually.
Wicked child!
In rehearsal, Rowan got a bit fed up with it, and actually it was very funny. He said, would it be all right, please, Miriam, if you didn't just do it quite so hard?
Wicked child!
One of my all-time favourite episodes. And people remember it. People come up to me and quote bits of the text, which is delightful.
What do they call you?
Bob!
In our next moment, Blackadder is distressed and confused to find himself lusting after his manservant, Bob. But is Bob really that sort of boy?
There's something very frisky about everything to do with Bob, and something so hilarious about a proud character like Blackadder making such a bad mistake.
I find you curiously pleasant company, young Bob.
Rowan won't mind me saying that he has in real life a slight and entirely erotically splendid stutter or stammer, I never know quite which is which, and particularly on the letter B, which makes him saying words like Bob very funny.
Good night, Bob.
Good night, my lord.
I've known other people who can do better O's, but his B's, beginning and ending B's, unbeatable.
Now, look here, Bob. I've got something very important to say to you, and I want you to listen very carefully.
Yes.
Rowan looked gorgeous in Blackadder too. I think the little goatee beard thing and the costume was, yeah, very, very dashing. He looked terribly dashing.
I want you to leave my service and become my live-in chum.
Oh, my lord!
Now, I want to make it absolutely clear that I'm in no way interested in the contents of your tights.
You might be, my lord, if you knew what I kept in them.
I flatter myself, Bob, that I know what a gentleman keeps in his tights. Thank you very much.
It's wonderfully played by Gabby Glaister, and the awkwardness of Blackadder dealing with this young boy he's in love with is just glorious.
Prepare to be amazed.
Oh, no, you haven't got one of those birthmarks shaped like a banana, have you?
No.
Or a tattoo saying, "Get it here."
No.
You then get this bizarre musical sort of trill, which overscores her showing of her bosoms. Ooh, like that to go, she's showing her bosoms. And you can't believe it, but it absolutely works.
Good Lord. So what was all that Bob stuff about, then?
Because you would have just used me and cast me aside like you have so many women before.
Would I?
Yes. But now you've had a chance to grow to love me for what I really am.
Yes, that's true. And now, I want to marry you, Bob.
Our next moment features one of TV's great comedy duos in a characteristically over-the-top moment.
It was great having Aid Edmondson on, the other half of Bottom, to play Flashheart's Oppo in the Royal Flying Corps episode.
Fast, Blackadder. Oh, damn, foiled again. What bad luck.
And the Lord Flashheart.
This is indeed an honour.
They were seen in those days, Rick and Aid, as from a different, not a different generation or a different class, because they were all graduate humour, really, but they were alternative, whereas us lot were more mainstream, or not mainstream, but from a tradition of, you know, Footlights, the Oxbridge humour, I suppose one can't deny it, which they were not from. So for them to be involved as well was a particular pleasure.
Finally, the two greatest gentlemen flyers in the world meet. Two men of honour who have jousted together in the cloud-strewn glory of the skies, are face to face at last.
Something we've seen in many films, or the way we imagine those war aces were, the kind of the Red Baron versus whoever we could offer, Biggles or something like that, and they respect each other. At any other time, they may even be friends. You know, if it weren't for this blasted war.
How often I have rehearsed this moment of destiny in my dreams.
Some of the First War pilots did regard themselves as these knights, so it's, again, a nice little joke about the historical record there.
The valor we to encapsulate, the unspoken nobility of our comradeship.
To then just get a bullet and what a puff, and off they go. I think it's one of the great moments.
Darling! Sir! No, sit.
My final scene with Stephen, before going to the front line, was brilliant. I mean, it is very funny, but it's awful.
This is a commission for the front lines.
Yes. I've been awfully selfish, darling, keeping you back here instead of letting you join in the fun game. This will let you get to the front line immediately.
You know, Tim's a very, very fine actor, and so is Stephen, and just that idea of definitely condemning a man to death and him not being able to object was, you know, moving. There are a few things in that final episode that feel very apt.
I don't want to go into battle.
Without me. I know, but I'm too old, darling.
And Darling's desperation and agony makes it, sadly, even funnier, and it is a very, very funny scene, and it's heartbreaking at the same time.
You're not listening, sir. I'm begging you, please.
Brilliant, believable performance, even though it's completely silly, with Melchett wearing his ludicrous moustache grooming thing that they used to wear when they went to bed.
For the sake of all the times I've helped you with your dicky bows and your dicky bladder, please.
Melchett really isn't listening and really doesn't seem to understand that he's sending him off to pretty much certain death.
Don't
make you go through the farewell debagging ceremony in the mess. No, I've spared you that too, you touchingly sentimental young booby.
And he represents the absolute insanity of the war. I mean, without being too pompous about Blackadder, it does, I think, illustrate perfectly the nature of that grotesque war, the genuine insanity, if you like, of the way the war was practiced, which for all, however it may have been justifiable, to us is now clear it was a moment of madness in human history that one would never want to repeat again. So it's wonderful you concentrate some of that madness into a single being.
Look, no fuss, no bother. The driver is already here. No, not a word, Kevin. I know what you want to say. I know.
And it was also beautifully shot. I mean, long shadows and high camera angles, and it was brilliantly shot, which added to the whole drama of it.
Goodbye, Kevin, darling.
Goodbye.
I think it's a very special piece of comedy.
Welcome back to our Cunning Countdown, as selected by the Blackadder family, including actual modern-day living and breathing Blackadders.
A couple of weeks ago, walking into a bank, and pretty much the guy took my details, laughed, and everyone in the bank started singing the theme tune. Pretty embarrassing.
Blackadder refuses to be embarrassed next, as he digs himself out of a hole with astonishing dexterity.
The monk who'd been having a hard drinking game with Blackadder next door comes in and he is totally out of it, you know. And he does everything you really wouldn't expect a monk to do.
Bring booze up, Edmonton!
Do you know that man?
Oh, yes, I do.
Then can you explain what he meant by great booze up?
It's a good 20 seconds where he says nothing, but actually you can see his mind working. You can see, and it's comic genius where he's going like, and he does it for about 20 seconds, then goes, yes, I can.
Yes, I can.
He manages to worm his way out of this situation through his sheer verbal gymnastics and kind of amazing, dry, articulate wit.
My friend is a missionary, and on his last visit abroad, brought back with him the chief of a famous tribe. His name is Great Boo. He's been suffering from sleeping sickness, and he's obviously just woken. Because as you heard, great booze up.
Well done, Edmund.
And I think I'd better just go and visit him. First, over to you.
Blackadder is one of the few sitcoms that addresses the great matters of state. Religion, politics, war and peace. But it's not afraid to plunder the vegetable patch for a few extra laughs.
Is the turnip surprise ready?
Mr. Smile.
Then what is so funny?
Well, my lord, while Baldrick and I were preparing the turnip surprise, we had a surprise. We came across a turnip that was exactly the same shape as a thingy.
I love it when people get giggles, and they were sniggering and tittering because they had found a turnip shaped like a thingy.
I can remember Ben Elton, who in many ways is an extraordinarily talented guy, bouncing up to me and saying, "I've got a great idea, Tony. Baldrick loves turnips."
Minimum bribe level.
1 turnip. I said to him, "What is so funny about turnips?" And he said, "Well, you know, they're shaped, they're like that, and they go to a point at the end." And I said, "Ben, that's parsnips." He said, "Whatever, it's really funny, believe me."
Great big thingy. It was terrific.
Size is no guarantee of quality, Baldrick. Most horses are very well endowed, but that does not necessarily make them sensitive lovers. I trust you have removed this hilarious item.
Yes, my lord.
Good, because there's nothing more likely to stop an inheritance than a thingy-shaped turnip.
Absolutely, Edmund. But it was jolly funny.
I found it particularly ironic, my lord, because I've got a thingy that's shaped like a turnip.
Yes.
Parties.
Are you?
Yeah, I hide in the vegetable rack and frighten the children.
So he's actually got a turnip-shaped penis. Takes a while to find that funny.
Right, Baldrick. Let's try again, shall we? This is called adding. If I have 2 beans, and then I add 2 more beans, what do I have?
Some beans.
This scene marks the big turning point for Baldrick. Up until then, he'd been the chipperest of the triumvirate of Percy, Blackadder and Baldrick. He was the one who genuinely did have at least some idea how they might get out of their scrapes. But now we come to the beans and the realisation that Baldrick can't even count.
Let's try again, shall we? I have 2 beans, then I add 2 more beans. What does that make?
A very small casserole.
And the fact that Baldrick never very rarely looks up at him. You don't get your nice, tilt of your head. He just keeps looking at the beans, hoping that they are the ones that will furnish him with the answer.
So if I add that one to the 3, what will I have?
Oh, some beans.
Yes. To you, Baldrick, the Renaissance was just something that happened to other people, wasn't it?
It was just a very clever example of Blackadder and the Blackadder humour, because it was just taking something tiny and making it very funny.
Baldrick's back and he's making a cuppa. Sadly, supplies are running thin. Time to improvise.
By the time we get to Series 4, Baldrick has no brain at all.
Baldrick, fix us some coffee, will you? And try to make it taste slightly less like mud this time.
Not easy, I'm afraid, Captain.
Why is this?
'Cause it is mud. We ran out of coffee 13 months ago.
So every time I've drunk your coffee since, I have in fact been drinking hot mud.
With sugar.
In the original script, the only line was about the fact that the coffee was made out of mud. And then somebody said, well, why don't you have sugar?
Which, of course, makes all the difference.
Well, it would do if we had any sugar, but unfortunately we ran out New Year's Eve 1915. Since when, I've been using sugar substitute.
Which is?
Dandruff.
Brilliant.
Coming up with quite what each vile ingredient was. It's always lovely in comedy when you set yourself a challenge. OK, so we've got some coffee, so what's the coffee? What's the froth?
I could add some milk this time. Well, saliva.
No, thank you, Baldrick. Call me Mr. Picky, but I think I'll cancel it, okay?
This is a fantastic scene because it is a perfect demonstration of the futility of human endeavour.
Success! What? After literally an hour's ceaseless searching, I have succeeded in creating gold, pure gold!
Are you sure?
Yes, my lord.
It's just a moment when the humour just comes together perfectly and they get that winning formula of Blackadder just being incredibly rude to hit all the people around him that are just stupid. They're playing with alchemy and they think they've created gold and it's obviously not. They're just a bunch of idiots.
Behold!
Percy, it's green.
That's right, my lord.
Yes, Percy, I don't want to be pedantic or anything, but the colour of gold is gold. That's why it's called gold. What you have discovered, if it has a name, is some green.
What a perfectly useless thing to create, green.
Can it be true that I hold here in my mortal hand a nugget of purest green?
Indeed you do, Percy, except, of course, it's not really a nugget, is it? It's more of a splat.
Percy was so thrilled to have created this thing.
Well, yes, a splat today, but tomorrow, who knows or dares to dream?
So we three alone in all the world can create the finest green at will.
Just so. I'm not sure about counting in Baldrick, actually.
Of course, you know what your great discovery means, don't you, Percy?
Perhaps, my lord.
That you, Percy, Lord Percy, are an utter Burke.
We could actually probably have made a fortune by creating lots of bits of green and selling them to the public. Maybe I could still do that now.
I'd like to see the Spaniard who could make his way past me.
Well, go to Spain. There are millions of them.
I advise them to stay there, then. Keep their hands off our women.
Oh, God. Who is she this time?
I don't know what you mean. Oh!
And who is Jane?
I am sworn to secrecy. Torture me, kill me, you shall never know. Oh, Jane Harrington! We are very much in love, my lord.
This is the Jane Harrington?
Yes.
Jane, bury me in a Y-shaped coffin, Harrington.
And it's a lovely image. I mean, a Y-shaped coffin is just a fantastic image.
I think maybe there are two Jane Harringtons.
No, tall, blonde, elegant.
Aye, that's right.
Goes like a privy door when the plague's in town.
Bangs like a privy door. When the plague's in town, you know, the plague's in town as if it just comes now and again.
You'll get over her. I did.
And his timing in it is priceless.
So did Baldrick, actually.
It's the combination of the visual and the timing and the words. It's just, you know, all of those coming together. Beautiful, beautiful.
Still on a romantic theme, Blackadder shows his true colours in this hilarious moment of pillow talk with Miranda Richardson, reincarnated as Mary. Queenie would have lopped his head off.
Do you have someone special in your life?
Well, yes, as a matter of fact, I do.
Who?
Me.
There's absolutely no temptation here that they're going to fall into a real romantic thing, that Blackadder's selfishness and thinking of himself is really going to come first no matter what.
No, I mean someone you love and cherish and want to keep safe from all the horror and the hurt.
Still me, really.
They've obviously done the dirty deed and he's still completely emotionally absent and self-involved. So maybe, I don't know, maybe he's slightly wistful.
I've always been a soldier, married to the army. The Book of King's Regulations is my mistress, possibly with a Harrod's lingerie catalogue discreetly tucked between the pages.
And no casual girlfriends?
Skirt? Ha! If only. When I joined up, we were still fighting colonial wars. If you saw someone in a skirt, you shot him and nicked his country.
I just think that's such a wonderfully simplistic and yet funny view of the expansion of the British Empire.
Have you got a man? Some fine fellow in an English country village? A vicar, maybe? Quiet, gentle, hung like a baboon.
There was a man I cared for a little. Wonderful chap. Strong, athletic.
What happened to him?
He bought it.
I'm so sorry, I didn't realise that was the arrangement. So what's it been? 12 nights, let's say 9 afternoons. How much is... Oh, and a couple of mornings.
I mean, he died.
There's a sort of underlying bit of sadness about it, which I think was... It goes all the way through the final series because of the sort of circumstances and the era and the timing of it, and the resonance of those scenes and how they would actually have been, you know, and those sort of relationships are always quite, you know, potentially quite fleeting.
When are we going to give Fritz a taste of our British spunk?
George, please.
A girl wouldn't have written that line, but secretly, girls find that funny. You shouldn't find it funny, but... And the fact that it comes... I shouldn't say this, but it comes out of his mouth.
No one is more anxious to advance than I am, but until they get these communication problems sorted out, I'm afraid we're stuck. Captain Blackadder speaking. No, I'm afraid the line's very...
Hello? Hello, Captain Blackadder, hello?
Schnell, schnell, Kartoffelkopf!
And that particular sequence, Blackadder and Darling on the phone, that was quite a fun one to do in front of the audience.
I said, there's a terrible line at my end. You're to advance on the enemy at once.
He does this one where he sort of sticks his tongue out and goes... but a bit too long.
A wandering minstrel,
Gale Force 8.
Oh, so come on, sir, what's the message? I'm on tenterhooks, do tell.
Well, as far as I can tell, the message was he's got a terrible lion up his end, so there's an advantage to an enema at once.
Damn! The idea that someone in an office can ring you up on the front and say, go to your death, I think it's pretty understandable that Blackadder shouldn't warm to the character of Darling in these circumstances. I don't think I would either.
Welcome back to our celebration of magnificent Blackadder moments. We are well into the top 10 now, so although we've had treats aplenty already, I can safely predict that the moments are in all likelihood going to get even more superb. Miriam Margolyes plays a Spanish princess who's perhaps more lusty than lovely. Oh well, you can't have it all.
The main thing about the Spanish Infanta is that she's hideously ugly. And I could have felt a bit peeved at being cast in this role, because although fat, I am charming and pleasant looking.
My favourite bit from Blackadder 1, without exception, and there were some very good bits to choose from, was Jim and Miriam's Spanish interpreter scene. Well, it's nice to talk about a ladies thing.
Esto estás bien.
Well, this is nice.
The fact that he was slightly camp seemed to fall into place from how it is written, and the fact that he had the famous line, nice just to have a little talk just about the ladies' things.
Hablemos un poco de cosas de mujeres.
To have a little talk about a ladies' thing.
Oh, sí, los dos solas.
Just the two of us.
Now, I'm a specialist in accents, and I'm not quite sure what accent Jim was employing. It doesn't matter. Hábleme de los hombres ingleses.
So tell me, Mrs. Queen, about Englishmen.
I've never worked out why it's so perfect, but I think it's that he misstresses every single word. It's just a sort of astonishing technical feat to get the rhythms of the English language so completely wrong.
Now, Edmund, what's he like?
Well, I told you, this pudding. No, in la cama.
Now, what's he like in bed?
It's his sort of childlike delight at saying, and what's he like in bed? In bed.
Well, in bed, he likes hot milk with just a little touch of cinnamon.
No. What is he like?
Well, it's like a little rabbit, really.
And in particular, he translates to, oh, she thinks because he shags like a rabbit. She got everything wrong because she's thinking of sex all the time because she's a complete nymphomaniac on the level of a dinosaur.
She would accept any twerp onto her bosom. She's that kind of lady.
Oh, Mummy, how much I love you.
The Interpreter is one of the greatest comic moments on television.
Right, so what do we do now?
Shall I do my war poem?
How hurt would you be if I gave the honest answer, which is, no, I'd rather French kiss a skunk?
So would I, sir.
All right, fire away, Baldrick.
He's like a kid at school on, at Parents' Day, just stood on stage reciting his poem that he's so proud of.
This one is called The German Guns.
Oh, spiffing! Yes, let's hear that.
Boom, 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 boom. To see Ben parody the notion of the war poem into one word, which is just the sound of the damn guns going off, I thought was a piece of brilliance.
The Boom 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 song was... I did watch that recently with my kids, and they loved it. I thought it was a bit grim, actually, but there you go. I mean, nicely performed.
Boom, boom, boom.
How could Baldrick write a poem that had any more than one syllable in it? It's just impossible. Anything else would be cheating the audience.
Say, sir, that is spooky.
I'm sorry, I think I've got to get out of here.
I think I might have even been judging a poetry competition at my son's school, and one of the boys, they were doing, Rudyard Kipling and Roger McGuff and lots of other serious, long poems, and then one of the boys stood up and said, this poem is called War by S. Baldrick, and just said boom 10 times. I felt very proud. I didn't realise that I'd contributed to English culture in that way, or me or Ben or whoever came up with it.
There was a wedding going on. Blackadder was going to marry Bob, and suddenly into the scene came this big, huge character, just full of balls, really. I suppose there's no other way to describe it.
He explodes.
Flash by name, Flash by nature.
The way he's dressed is just superb, like a huzzah.
It's amazing. Whatever he's wearing, what wig, the audience kind of gasps. He's got such braggadocio.
I don't know, but he's in your place.
And he just picks him up and throws him out the door.
Thanks, bridesmaid. Like the beard.
Gives me something to hang on to.
Gives me something to hang on to.
If you look at the scene, you will see that everyone's standing around on that set looking completely amazed at what's the force of nature that's just arrived.
So my old mate Eddie's getting hitched, eh? What's the matter? Can't stand the pace of the in-crowd?
Because Rick was so noisy, so determined that every single line he said should be the funniest and the loudest that it could possibly be, that Rowan just gently stepped back during those weeks and did his homework in private while we indulged Rick's magnificent firework personality, and then Rowan would step forward once Flashheart had buggered off.
Hi, Queenie.
The Queen of England just melts.
You look sexy. But listen, wear your hair long. I prefer it that way.
I've got such a crush on him.
Your life is made better for a moment when Flash is there.
Nursey!
Nursey obviously fancied him rotten.
I like it, firm and fruity. Am I pleased to see you, or did I just put a canoe in my pocket? Down, boy, down!
Hot red-blooded male, isn't he? He's alpha male.
Where's this amazing bird? The one who stopped my old pal Eddie doing exactly whatever he wants. 10 times a night.
Ah, yes, Flash, let me introduce my fiancée, Kate.
My baby. She's got a tongue like an electric eel, and she likes the taste of a man's tonsils.
Flashheart, I think we'd all like to be just a little bit.
In the episode in which Blackadder attempts to demonstrate his insanity by using the word "wibble" all the time, it is preposterously funny.
This is a large crisis. And a large crisis requires a large plan. Get me 2 pencils and a pair of underpants. Right, Baldrick. This is an old trick I picked up in the Sudan. We tell HQ that I've gone insane, and I will be invalided back to Blighty before you can say wibble.
Rowan is a big one for the plosive. P's and B's are very... I can't begin to do it. Why did I even try to do Rowan doing it?
I just like the word. Wibble.
Wibble.
Wibble, wibble, wibble.
A poor, gormless idiot.
Well, I'm a poor, gormless idiot, sir, and I've never been invalided back to Blighty.
Yes, Baldrick, but you never said wibble. Now, ask me some simple questions.
Right. What is your name?
Wibble.
What is 2 + 2?
Oh, wibble, wibble.
Where do you live?
London? Hey? A small village on Mars, just outside the capital city. Wibble.
All the men present and correct, sir. Ready for the off, eh?
I'm afraid not, Lieutenant. I'm just off to Hartlepool to buy some exploding trousers.
Come again, sir. Have you gone barking mad?
Yes, George, I have. Cluck, cluck, gibber, gibber, my old man's a mushroom, etc.
This tremendous irony that he is in the maddest, craziest situation you could possibly be in, and yet he's trying to prove his madness to get out of it.
Stephen Fry comes on, as always, steals the show and plays Wellington in the final episode. The thing they get very right about that is his nose. They perfectly craft this nose. It looks exactly like the Duke of Wellington. His nickname was Nosy, because he had a huge nose.
And may the best man win, i.e. me.
But the other thing that is so great, I think, is Stephen's wig. He looks so completely Georgian, so like how I imagine the Duke of Wellington would have looked, that it's completely plausible.
Your tea, sir.
You're late!
Quite frightening when he gets a bit of a shout on.
That kind of big, booming, just for no reason. He has to talk extremely loudly because he is Wellington.
Where have you been for in India?
The skill is not in the person punching or throwing the slap. It's always in the person receiving it. Anyone can do that or that. It's the timing of your ow, and Hugh is an absolute genius at being hit.
I remember him arriving to do the violent stuff, the slapstick stuff, with some trepidation, because I've done things with Stephen before, physical things. He has punched, you know, where he's had to act punching me, and he's acting, well, how can I put it? He's punched me, basically. He's just punched me.
Where have you been for in India? Ceylon? China?
It's the force which he comes towards it and smashes that table is so unexpected that it works perfectly. It's one of those jokes that you just go...
China! And don't bother to show me the way out. I don't want to die of old age before I get to the front door.
Stephen Fry obviously loved the idea, because it's a great comic idea, that the upper classes are just not only unbearably rude to the lower classes, but they've hit them physically.
Dr. Johnson, Your Highness.
Ah, Dr. Johnson. Damn cold day.
Indeed it is, sir, but a very fine one.
One of the joys of Blackadder was that every so often Robbie Coltrane would join us.
I mean, Robbie Coltrane as Dr. Johnson, in a truly brilliant performance.
I celebrated last night the encyclopedic implementation of my premeditated orchestration of demotic Anglo-Saxon.
No, didn't catch any of that.
There was a certain truth to it, beyond the magnificent comedy.
Plus, the script at the time that they gave him was brilliant. It is witty, it is elegant, and they play it to the hilt.
Well, I simply observe, sir, that I'm felicitous, since during the course of the penultimate solar sojourn, I terminated my uninterrupted categorization of the vocabulary of our post-Norman tongue.
Oh, I don't know what you're talking about, but it sounds damn saucy, you lucky thing.
I believe, sir, that the doctor is trying to tell you that he is happy because he has finished his book. It has apparently taken him 10 years.
Yes, well, I'm a slow reader myself.
It's a great example of Blackadder at its best, which is that it, pricks pomposity.
This book, sir, contains every word in our beloved language.
Every single one, sir?
Every single word, sir.
Oh, well, in that case, sir, I hope you will not object if I also offer the doctor my most enthusiastic contrafibularities. Contrafibularities, sir? It is a common word down our way.
It is very much sort of public schoolboy, undergraduate humour, isn't it? It's all about words.
Oh, I'm sorry, sir. I'm anaspeptic, phrasmotic, even compunctious to have caused you such pericombobulation.
The smugness and the enjoyment with which Blackadder is just ruining Samuel Johnson's life. And this is a man who spent 10 years writing his dictionary, and Blackadder just takes enormous pleasure in just knocking him down.
I'm sorry, sir. I merely wished to congratulate the doctor on not having left out a single word.
Blackadder cannot resist coming up with things to confound him.
Just his ability to snipe, something that we'd all like to have the bravery to do, or I would.
Oh, if only I'd managed to... Damn! If I was there again, I would do this, I'd say this, and he does it. He has the bon mot.
I shall return interphrastically.
Welcome back to the climactic part of Blackadder's most cunning moments. And now our second most marvellous moment. Not long to go now, darling.
How do I look, darling?
Girl bait, sir. Pure bloody girl bait.
We speak at cross purposes, and it's rather touching because I'm rehearsing my lines of love to Georgina, and he takes them as personally, and you sort of know that he rather likes taking them as personally. It's all very weird and very British, but highly enjoyable.
Moustache? Bushy enough?
Like a privet head, sir.
Good, because I want to catch a particularly beautiful creature in this bush tonight.
Wherever Stephen goes, he travels with a small packet of double entendre in his wallet, which he can whip out at a moment's notice.
I know exactly what I'll say to her. Darling.
Yes, sir? I don't know, sir.
Well, don't butt in.
Such a simple joke, but it is irresistible, and it works over and over again.
I want to make you happy, darling.
Well, that's very kind of you, sir.
Will you kindly stop interrupting? If you don't listen, how can you tell me what you think? I want to make you happy, darling. I want to build a nest for your 10 tiny toes. I want to cover every inch of your gorgeous body in pepper and then sneeze all over you.
Really, sir? I must protest.
That realisation on his face, and then him actually considering, actually, that's not... Well, actually, I could probably live with that, as long as I don't have to go to the front.
What is the matter with you, darling?
Well, it's just all so sudden, sir. I mean, the nest bit's fine, but the pepper business is definitely out.
How dare you tell me how I may or may not treat my beloved Georgina?
Georgina?
Yes, I'm working out what I want to say to her this evening.
Oh, yes, of course. My God.
I think it's a fantastic piece of writing, and it was great fun to do, and very, very difficult to do.
Honestly, darling, you really are the most graceless, dim-witted bumpkin I ever met.
I don't think you should say that to us.
You think being called darling 40 times an hour by your boss would be quite nice, really? You get done for sexual harassment, I suppose.
And now, here we are, the #1 Blackadder moment and one of the most popular scenes in TV history.
Don't forget your stick, Lieutenant.
Rather, sir. Wouldn't want to face a machine gun without this.
The last episode of the 4th series of Blackadder, as many people have often said, is an extraordinary piece of television, of writing and acting, as it starts off very jolly and silly and is a bit of a scam, and gradually it gets more and more serious and sad and actually quite scary, and ends with that extraordinary scene.
It's become inevitable, and you can't believe that these people who are completely personal to you, they are like family, are in this situation.
Listen, our guns have stopped.
You don't think...
Maybe the war's over. Maybe it's peace.
Oh, hurrah! The big knobs have got round the table and yanked the iron out of the fire.
Thank God. We lived through it. The Great War, 1914 to 1970.
Hip, hip, hooray!
Each of the little lines that come before they go over the top has a particular point to do with defeatism and optimism, and then the final twist when he says it's the end of the war and it's 1917, and you know that's not right.
I'm afraid not. The guns have stopped because we're about to attack. Not even our generals are mad enough to shell their own men. They think it's far more sporting to let the Germans do it.
So we are, in fact, going over. This is, as they say, it.
The resignation, the sadness, the wisdom, and the bravery.
I'm afraid so. Unless I can think of something very quickly.
Company, 1 pace forward.
Oh, there's a nasty splinter on that ladder, sir. A bloke could hurt himself on that.
Stand ready.
I have a plan, sir.
Really, Baldrick? A cunning and subtle one?
Yes, sir.
As cunning as a fox who's just been appointed Professor of Cunning at Oxford University?
Yes, sir.
On the signal, company will advance.
Well, I'm afraid it'll have to wait.
There's this abrupt stop. The joke's finished.
Whatever it was, I'm sure it was better than my plan to get out of this by pretending to be mad. I mean, who would have noticed another madman around here?
Clearly, the atmosphere of the last episode was deliberately thought-provoking. I mean, the whole idea you have to be mad to be in it, so you're not going to get out by being mad. And I hope that the tone was set, not just by the script, but by the fantastic performances.
Good luck, everyone.
Reality comes in, and reality is standing there waiting to go over the top, and the whistle blowing, and the words, good luck, and you know that luck had nothing to do with it.
And the music, that sort of pub piano feeling right at the end from Howard Goodall, I thought was absolutely chilling.
It's tremendously moving, always brings a tear to the eye, and a fantastic, fitting end to a great series.
And that, perhaps, is the brilliance of Blackadder, the reason it stands head and shoulders above the rest. It was always prepared to push the boundaries and redefine what a sitcom could be. It brought home the madness of history in a way that mostly made us laugh, but wasn't afraid to make us cry. Thank you, Blackadder.
People often ask me if I'm proud of Blackadder, or proud of doing it, or proud of producing it. And what I'm really proud of is this amazing sense of teamwork.
I think I just feel lucky. You know, you do your best that you can in your 20s to try and do the thing that you think is funniest. And it's a fluke and a miracle if it turns out that the one that you wrote has lasted.
The great news is that everybody involved in it, I think, is still friends. I mean, very much so.
We're eternally bound together, you know, by that experience. Every year we meet under the clock at Paddington Station, 10 to 4, all wearing the tie. We've got a tie made, you know, nice.
Go away!
Yes, my lord. Love Blackadder? Check out Gold this January on Sky 110 and Virgin Media 126 as Blackadder features on their magnificent 7. It starts Monday 10th at 9. Back to tonight, and here on Dave, Fawlty Towers reopened gets the lowdown on the comedy classic next.